Yeah, this new season of The Boys, it's not good. What the hell happened to this show? Make no mistake, I'm not here to complain about how the series has somehow gone woke, because I'm not stupid. A week before season 4 of The Boys had dropped, I had released a brief video in which I had expressed concern for the new season because a bunch of red flags were popping up left and right. People took this video as a negative review for the series without understanding that I made it as a fan. I'm someone who has sung this show's praises since before season 3, so these comments telling me not to watch it if I don't like it are just reductive. I can and will watch whatever I want and give my opinion on it. You don't get to tell me what I can and can't do. I'm the Homelander, I can do whatever the fuck I want. Really, it's just people who don't like hearing negative things about the show they enjoy, but it's also a hypocritical stance to make since you're literally watching my video. I expected to get annoying comments from fanboys of the show, but I didn't express this to upset anybody. I just really wanted the show to succeed because it truly did have potential to be one of the highlights for the superhero genre, but it turns out that most of my concerns were completely valid, while very few were alleviated. I'm planning on recording a podcast with my friend talking broadly about seasons 1 through 4 on my other channel, so once that's out, I guess there will be a pinned comment linking you to it or something. I don't really know what I'm going to do with all that. But the purpose of this video is not really to review this season or even to discuss what it gets wrong narratively or aesthetically. I'm going to address personal issues I have with the cynical nature of the show and with Kripke himself. For starters, there is one statement from this video I'd like to walk back on. I have said that Kripke announced the show was going to be longer than 5 seasons, and that was unequivocally false, and I admit that I went off of a clickbaity title without actually reading the article. Turns out, that was a lie. He was talking about Supernatural in that quote. It was wrong of me to jump to conclusions, and that's one of the biggest video essayist sins you could ever commit, so I do apologize. I would at least like to clarify that I wouldn't put it past Kripke to do such a thing, but I'm pretty glad the show's going to stay 5 seasons because I really don't want this show to overstay its welcome and get the Supernatural treatment. When The Boys dropped, it was a breath of fresh air. The MCU and DCEU felt like they were completely overtaking cinema, so out comes this Watchmen spiritual successor that had a very interesting message. I was already blown away by how complex and endearing the idea of being personally affected by a major celebrity was. The first episode had me in a vice grip and held tightly for the remainder of the season. It was a complete fuck you to every major corporation, the entirety of the MCU, and every conniving politician under the sun. It made fun of the generic and soulless world of entertainment and propaganda. However, this show kind of put itself in an awkward position. For as self-aware as the show might be, it kind of takes things too far into a meta direction and ends up calling out other shows and corporations for doing things that the show itself has been guilty of since the outset. One such example is making fun of an overabundance of MCU content.
Is that a video game about the slave trade?
Some powerful stuff.
It's really something.
Ain't it obvious? Movie tickets, merchandising, theme parks, video games, a multi-billion-dollar global industry supported by corporate lobbyists and politicians on both sides.
It always mocks it as soulless cash grabs that are cheap and uncreative, and since you already know where I'm taking this, here's Homelander's fatality. Look, I like Mortal Kombat as a franchise. I've been trying out 11 and hope to find a friend to play Armageddon with if possible, but this, as well as Call of Duty, is precisely what this show is making fun of the MCU for. They even go to the extent to include a really awful...
Oi, Brian.
Butcher?
Well, better me than some dodgy incel walking vault coin.
I think what happened is that Season 1, 2, and especially 3 were terrifyingly shocking and over the top, and now ever since Herogasm, they haven't really put together a good way to outdo themselves, and they keep trying really hard to do so over and over again. Nothing's gonna shock us anymore. I was uncomfortable and disgusted by a lot of what this season had, but I was not surprised. I'll elaborate more on that later. For now, I'm just gonna say that the show's dialogue has always lacked subtlety. It was very loud and proud with what it tried to say, but it's definitely lost its charm with every passing episode. I thought it was hilarious how the show tried super hard to get you hyped by having Starlight and the others call Stormfront
Nazi bitch!
as they kicked the shit out of her, and then made fun of that exact same line in the following season.
Nazi bitch.
It can afford to, and I thought it was the show's way of trying to be self-deprecating, but the dialogue has actually somehow gotten way worse and a lot less clever.
Disband the Bureau of Superhuman Affairs.
condemn the defund the soups movement, remove all books and teachers that teach critical soup theory.
Shut the fuck up. You cannot just shoehorn the word soup into a modern-day political term and call it clever satire. You're not even saying anything about the topics you're referencing. You're just stringing words together and hoping people say,
I understood that reference.
remember how Vought took way too long to do anything about the Deep sexually assaulting Starlight? Remember when Huey couldn't take legal action against A-Train and Vought literally tried to pay him money to keep quiet about what happened? Remember how the main problem through most of the series is that everyone's too scared of Homelander and he ends up doing whatever the hell he wants, completely abusing his power in every way imaginable? Okay, I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but here's the most important one. You remember when this show humanized Arabic people? Well, Tomer Capone, the actor for Frenchie, was a squad leader for the IDF's 202nd Battalion of the Paratroopers Brigade. This means that he has Palestinian blood on his hands, and he has been quite vocal about his support for Israel. Some commenters called me a Nazi for labeling him as a Zionist, and I think that's disgusting. I think it's disgusting that you're using genuine, real oppression against Jewish people to justify what is indisputably a genocide. What Israel is doing isn't about Judaism. It's about power over those that can't fight back. To build some context here, Israel has taken over the land of Palestinians in a way similar to colonialism, and it has been displacing, harming, killing, and oppressing Palestinians since 1948. The land has been contested since then, with Israel holding the majority of the land, and there have been many attacks from both sides. The West Bank, one Palestinian territory, is currently occupied by Israel. Gaza, the other territory, and the one primarily involved in the current events, was occupied by Israel until 2005 when they withdrew. However, Israel still controls the Gaza Strip airspace and territorial waters, as well as the movement of people or goods in or out. There is also a blockade which continues to restrict essential goods and contributes to economic hardship. The Gaza Strip and West Bank is considered an apartheid state by multiple official organizations. Sorry, not sorry, but it is never okay to commit genocide against anyone, Jewish, Palestinian, or otherwise. Saying so does not mean that I support Hamas, nor does it mean I hate Jewish people. Bombing Palestinian houses, destroying their hospitals, forcing them to live in tents. There are Israeli soldiers actively saying that they think all Palestinians should be erased off the face of the planet.
תכסחו אותם כמה שיותר, שלא להשאיר מהם זכר. שלא הם, לא אמא שלהם, לא הילדה שלהם, לא התינוקות שלהם. אסור להם לחיות האלה.
I have seen videos of parents holding the heads of dead children. But no, I'm supposed to support this because apparently, according to some very smart people on the internet, Palestinians hate gay people. Well, so do a lot of people in America, but I don't want this place to be bombed to shit. The Palestinian casualties include children, and I'm pretty sure those kids don't even know what a gay person is. I'm going to include some ways that you can support Palestine in the description, because even though that's not what this video is about, I think the more people knowing about what's going on, the better. But there is a very good, albeit depressing video from Shaun that illustrates a lot of this in much greater detail than I could ever hope to, which will also be linked in the description. Free Palestine. They need any support we can give them. Raise awareness for this anywhere you can, even if it's just a simple tweet. Why am I talking about this? Well, for one, it's important to me, but I also find it shocking that Kripke didn't really do much about this. He made a neutral statement on what's happening in Palestine. He mostly just said a lot of nothing. But I think it's really ironic that they made one of the central villains of this season use the word Zionist as an insult against her detractor. I get that this was filmed before Tomer Capone chose to out himself as a tyrant, but there's no reason he couldn't have cut this line from the show. It's really ironic that much of Frenchie's arc this season is about the people he's killed, but we've also revealed that he's bisexual and, well, considering Kripke stated he doesn't want to kill queer characters anymore, that basically means Frenchie's not going to die. He does turn himself in for his crimes, so it's unclear if he's going to be absent from the show moving forward, but that's not really the point. The show has been extremely vocal about how corporations always take the coward's way out when a celebrity they work with is shown to be kind of a bad person. Having an IDF soldier in your show sort of goes against everything the show has been saying for the past 3 seasons. This is the most anti-fascist superhero show I can remotely think of. So you'd think he'd be more willing to publicly denounce someone like Frenchie. Now, An argument can be made here that because Kripke is Jewish, it means he's in an awkward position. Lots of Jewish people have spoken out against what Israel is doing, and in turn been persecuted by those who support Israel. It's a tough spot to be put in, but when you have the power that Kripke does, including one of the most popular shows out there right now, I'm sorry, but that's not really an excuse, and this quiet way they've sort of pushed Frenchie to the back without actually addressing Tomer's actions, it feels very Vought. The Deep was one of my personal favorite characters in the show, and the primary reason was because of how realistic he felt as a portrayal of celebrity that abuses his power. In the first episode, he sexually assaults Starlight, but this comes out to the public, and Vought is left with no choice but to kick him off the 7. At a certain point, a woman sexually assaults him by fingering his gills, a not-so-subtle metaphor for women who give men a finger without consent. And I thought this choice was interesting because it flipped the power dynamics, and he ended up learning firsthand what it's like. On top of that, we learn about his shame in his own body and how that's the very reason he's lashed out at so many women and objectified them in so many ways, but this new season makes me look at this scene in a new light. Even though we address his dysmorphia and shame, he really doesn't retain any trauma from what happened to him. I do understand that different people respond to traumatic events in different ways. Trauma is a strange thing, and some people won't really respond to something bad that happens to them all that strongly. But it just makes me wonder why this scene was even included, especially since Chase Crawford has gone on record saying that this scene made him deeply uncomfortable. But then I saw a part where Jensen Ackles also said no to a scene that made him uncomfortable.
And is there anything that you would draw the line at doing? I know you're joining for the first season, but The Boys is known.
I already had to draw a line. I literally came in and I was like, well, I can't do that.
The specifics are unknown because he doesn't actually tell you what the scene was, but he did say this.
That's The Boys. Hang on, and Kripke was like, all right. Like, he wasn't like, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't want to do this? I believe the reaction I got was,
yeah. And that's the thing about Kripke, never expose your weakness, because if once he knows that you might have an issue with something, then he just keeps on writing it.
Which got me thinking about a concerning trend in this new season. At a certain point, Homelander goes back to the lab that he grew up in, and we get to see a more clear-cut picture of what his childhood was like. After a gruesome scene in which he incinerates one man, he also tells a story about how another caught him masturbating and made fun of him for it, so he has the guy jerk off in front of everybody, lasers his dick off when he can't get it up, and then crushes his head beneath his boot. It's as disturbing as everything else in the show leading up to this point, but it's also pointless because sexual trauma is not part of Homelander's character. He literally jerks off on top of a building with his cheeks hanging out, where literally anybody could see what he's doing. That does not convey sexual shame. So why do we have this scene? So we can see how much of a freak Homelander is, and so we can feel deeply uncomfortable as an old man is forced to masturbate against his will as a twisted sort of revenge. The show did a great job at handling Starlight's situation in a respectful manner, but I'm realizing that when it comes to men, it feels like it's included as something to gawk at. I thought that we had shown what happened to the Deep as a means of trying to hammer home how serious sexual assault is for male audiences, and strayed away from showing what happened to Starlight out of respect for her character, but it turns out the latter is true and the former is not, because in the latest episode, Huey basically gets assaulted in a myriad of different ways, being forced to sit and fart on a cake for the pleasure of someone else, having his feet tickled when Ashley masturbates, and almost having holes cut into his body for someone to fuck. On its face, these all seem tame with exception to the third one, which doesn't happen because his friends arrive just in time to save him. But it turns out Kripke included all of this simply because he thinks it's funny. He did this because Huey wanted to cover a certain plot point in the comic, so Kripke decided to go through with it in the worst way imaginable. Whenever I watch interviews with Kripke, I get really angry, primarily because he loves talking up his own unfunny ideas as the most clever shit you've ever heard. He learned about cake farts and then decided he just had to include it because it was too freaking awesome sauce on an epic plate of bodaciousness. Huey just lost his dad in the previous episode, which also felt like it came out of nowhere and just doubled down on edge for the sake of it, and Huey doesn't even get closure on it until he opens up to Starlight about what just happened to him, which seems like a touching moment, but now just feels like a cheap cover-up for what is, again, just tasteless mockery of sexual assault. Like saying, look guys, I take it seriously, as a means of brushing off criticism, when in reality this is just not enough, especially since his reaction has less to do with what happened to him and more to do with his dad dying. You can't even make the argument that what happened to Huey was not that bad, because that's not really the point. Even if the guy didn't end up doing what he said he was going to do, the fact that he almost did is traumatic enough. Take that scene from The Last of Us, for example. That scene still disturbs the shit out of me, even though it didn't happen. You guys realize that one of the biggest reasons prison rape is so common is precisely because nobody takes it seriously, right? But Kripke would not feel at all comfortable portraying a woman in any of these scenarios. It's as if he's convinced himself that putting men in uncomfortable scenarios is some kind of empowering activism. If you spend your time trying to take sexual assault against women seriously, but then think it's funny to have your main character get assaulted in ridiculous and absurd ways, guess what? You're not a feminist. You're a virtue-signaling piece of shit, and you're part of the fucking problem. It's not activism to show men getting assaulted the way women do. That's just trying to right a wrong with another wrong. This season is the most bloated, pointless, directionless pile of garbage the show has had yet. Plot points introduced in season 1 and 2, like the Compound V being spread across the globe, or Stormfront Soup mental hospital patients that broke out since the facility was compromised, have not been pursued or elaborated on since they were introduced. New characters get introduced and killed before they can make any meaningful impact. Frenchie's bisexual plot point came out of nowhere and almost felt like it flew by without getting any time to breathe. We literally learned that he killed his boyfriend's family the exact same episode that he finds out, meaning we don't get any time to feel the tension of him potentially finding out the truth. We finally get to learn more about Kimiko's past, only for the Blacklight Liberation Army to be massacred by her off-screen and then never elaborated on again. Shit continues to happen for no reason, whether it adds anything meaningful to the story or not. I'm convinced Kripke got so used to doing a Monster of the Week plot for Supernatural that he legitimately doesn't even know how to write an overarching narrative. This show has completely fallen apart and lost what little structure it had left, and the decline has been slow and gradual since season 2. This new season has done legitimately nothing but disappoint me, and I don't think I even have the strength to finish it. Not after learning this about Kripke, that he thinks male sexual assault is hilarious. I feel sick watching this show, and I don't feel right bothering with it anymore. So yeah, I guess those commenters really did win. I don't like it, and I'm not going to watch it anymore. This used to be one of my all-time favorite live-action television shows, but now it's become the very thing it set out to criticize in the first place.